So Gallatin County is named after Albert Gallatin, who is a Swiss-American diplomat, politician, ethnographer. He was the Secretary of Treasury for Thomas Jefferson, and he was in there for a long time. There's a big statue of Albert Gallatin right outside the Department of the Treasury. So he was, one of the founders, one of the main people. He opposed Alexander Hamilton and many of the things he was wanting to do. And, he was head of the Treasury for, I think, longer than a lot of the presidents. So throughout his career, Albert Gallatin pursued an interest in Native American language and culture. He drew upon government contracts in his research, gathered information through Lewis Cass, explorer William Clark, and Thomas McKinney of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Gallatin developed a personal relationship with the Cherokee tribal leader John Ridge, who provided him with information on the vocabulary and structure of the Cherokee language. Gallatin's research resulted in 2 published works, Table of Indian Languages of the United States, published 1826, and the Synopsis of the Indian Tribes of North America, published in 1836. His research led him to conclude that the natives of the North and South America were linguistically and culturally related, and that their common ancestors had migrated from Asia in prehistoric times. In 1842, Gallatin joined with John Russell Bartlett to form the American Ethnological Society. Later research efforts include examination of selected Pueblo societies, the Acamel, Odam, Pima peoples, and the Maricopa of the Southwest. In politics, Albert Gallatin stood for assimilation of Native Americans into a European-based American society, which he's wrong about, right? Assimilation, it's integration, not assimilation. You keep your shit, but we all immigrants. Assimilate to Swiss, you motherfucker, you're a fucking Swiss immigrant. You're sitting there. Anyways, he encouraged federal efforts in education leading to assimilation and denying annuities for Native Americans displaced by Western expansion. As of 1848, Gallatin was serving as president of the American Ethnological Society. In 1849, Gallatin died in Astoria. It is now the borough of Queens, New York. And prior to his death, Gallatin had been the last survivor member of the Jefferson cabinet and the last survivor senator from the 18th century. So when he died, it was big news because he was one of the original fucking established people. So he did a lot of studying about the Native Americans, but it seemed a little sinister since he just wanted them to, assimilate into his Switzerland/American culture. But that's, yeah. So that's it's a nation of immigrants, right? The Swiss and actually, that's Gallatin County is named after all these different names because we're European. We are a European state or county. We're state too, but with 97% white, a lot of people, I'm American. Okay, American, you're American now because, you're born here now. But 200 years ago, you weren't American. You're Swiss, you're French, Spanish, English, Scots, Irish, Welsh. In fact, in the beginning, I got the founding of the statehood book. It was Welsh. Let's see, the 2 biggest groups was over half of them was English. The original settlers in Kentucky, the original white settlers. Over half of them are English. 25% are Scots-Irish. About 9% are Scots, and about 9% is Irish, and about 9% is Welsh. So those are the demographics right there. So you got a mixture of Scottish, Irish, Welsh. I want to say Dutch too, or German. There was a 4% German also, or Prussian, or German-speaking peoples. So mostly English, but lots of other cultures too. So where do all the cities and the other names of the places where they come from, right? There's actually I was looking for the names of the cities, and actually I wrote down Napoleon because I wanted to find out where it was, and we didn't find nothing about Napoleon. It just says it's an unincorporated community. This Wikipedia. But something interesting on the very bottom, it mentions that there's other unincorporated communities. They say that in Gallatin County there's Carson, there's Etheridge, there's Monk, there's Napoleon, and there's Ryle. So not only is there Napoleon isn't the only small town in Gallatin County. I think Etheridge are just like a few houses along 42. Carson, I don't know anything about Carson. I don't know anything about Monk, and I don't know anything about Ryle. Now, there's a ghost town, and they call Steele's Creek a ghost town. So I guess it's sort of like everybody along there, there's no real town or concentration of people, but since, maybe the Paint Lick, the Baptist church there, maybe that's sort of the town center for Steele's Creek. So where are these fucking towns at and why were they named? I don't know. I assume Napoleon was named after the conqueror, but you know you can't be 100% about that. So Sparta, where did Sparta come from? Why are we named Sparta? Sparta. It doesn't say why Sparta is named Sparta either. And Sparta is a city in both Gallatin and Owen County, so you know, and the population is 230. So Sparta, Glencoe, and Warsaw are the three major cities, right? And Warsaw is like 1,800, about 2,000 people. Sparta has 230 people, and then Glencoe only has 371. So actually, Glencoe is a bigger city than Sparta. Sparta is tiny, very small. So where do these names come from? So Sparta, that's Greece, right? The great Spartans, the Spartan versus the Athenians. The Spartans were like warriors. They weren't smart and as cultured, but they was able to conquer the Athenians, who were more, you know, they're for democracy and more intellectual. But the Spartans only give a shit about being strong and fierce and being warrior-like. Eventually Athens wins because their culture outlasted the Spartans, but might made right. You know, the Spartans showed that it doesn't matter how smart you are or how proper your system is, somebody could just have bigger motherfuckers and they just take you over. So Sparta, I don't know where the name actually comes from. I assume it's Sparta, Greece. I think that's a good assumption. Sparta began as a village named Brock's Station. So I know some Brocks, so I wonder if that, you know, they're related to the people that actually had established Brock Station. It's station's usually a fort, right, or so, like a group of housing and shit. So it used to be known Brock Station in 1802. And then Sparta became incorporated as a town in 1852. Sparta became a stop on the Louisville-Nashville Railroad. So the L&N Railroad, that's to get a stop on the L&N Railroad was important because the whole train, you know, it takes forever to get it going pretty fast. But once it gets pretty, you know, once it gets going, then, you know, it can travel, it can carry lots of fucking freight. But a stop helps the town and the culture around it. And I think there might have been a stop in Glencoe too, because Glencoe used to have like 50 banks, or not 50, like 5 banks and these big ass stores and shit. But there's a stop in Sparta, which would have helped the town grow and get bigger. The L&N Railroad is now called the CSX. The CSX Railroad still runs through Sparta along Eagle Creek. Interstate 71 is about 1 mile away from the city. Sparta is 96% white, 3% black, and less than 1% from other races. They said Hispanic or Latino of all races are about 2%. So that's Sparta. That doesn't really say the origin of the city. Let's see, I want to get to, let's see, Gent, Glencoe, and Warsaw. I'm gonna just go in that order. So I'm just gonna do Glencoe, then Gent, then Warsaw. So Glencoe, Kentucky. Where did Glencoe, Kentucky get its name? A post office was established in the community in 1848. Post office is sort of like the courthouse, right? That's where a lot of the government business would happen, at the post office. So if they're cold to you at the post office and they're shitty to you and they're stuck up, or if they're listening to Rush Limbaugh, then it just shows, you know, that they're carrying on with this racial bigotry and hatred. And you know, it's a government center, so you can't be political. You can't be, you know, picking sides. You have to administer for everybody, right? Even if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're supposed to be representative for all the people. Glencoe was named for Glencoe in Scotland. And Glencoe in Scotland is the site of the Massacre of Glencoe. And then Glencoe was finally incorporated by the State Assembly in 1960. Okay, so 1960 is actually when it formed. So Glencoe is 50 years old, 50 or 60 years old, you know, when the Kentucky actually started recognizing them. Now Glencoe, what's Glencoe in Scotland? Well, Glencoe, it's actually 2 words, Glen and Co. Glencoe is a volcanic glen in the Highlands of Scotland. Volcanic glen. Let's see what glen is. Glen is a valley, typically one that is long, deep, and often glacially U-shaped. One with a watercourse running through such a valley. Whitlow defined a Scottish term for a deep valley in the Highlands that is narrower than a strath. Okay. The word is Goidic. Glen is Scottish and Irish Gaelic. Alright, so we got Welsh and Irish, right? So Glen is a volcanic glen. So it's volcanic and it's a little fucking narrow stream in the Highlands of Scotland. So it's an area of Scotland where there's volcanic and there's like some streams and shit, right? So it lies in the southern part of the Lochaber Committee area of the Highland Council, formerly part of the county of Argyll. It's often considered one of the most spectacular and beautiful places in Scotland, and it is part of the designated National Scenic Area of Ben Nevis and Glencoe. The narrow glen shows a grim grandeur. The glen, approaching from east on the main 882, is surrounded by wild and precipitous mountains. Further west at Invercoe, the landscape has a softer beauty before the main entrance to the glen. The main settlement is the nearby village. Okay, I see Glencoe right now. So there's big fucking volcanoes, but then you have like all these streams all around, plush greens and stuff. So it's hilly, it got volcanoes and shit, but it's also got all these streams. It says it's the most scenic spot. The name Glencoe is often said to mean the Glen of Weeping, perhaps with some reference to the infamous Massacre of Glencoe, which took place here in 1692. So that's significant. If you're in Glencoe, write down 1692 and Massacre of Glencoe, because that's when the Massacre of Glencoe happened, and it got established in the 1800s. So we don't know. This is probably right. I believe this is right. So the name of the river is believed to predate the Gaelic language, and the meaning is not known. One possibility is named after a tribe that was living in the area. It's speculation, though. It's also possible that it stems from an individual person named Comham. So it is gorgeous. I'm looking at all these pictures on Wikipedia. They have just, it seems like mountains, like not exactly like straight up and down mountains, but just like rocky mountains, and then like just kind of grassy knolls all around it. So it's gorgeous. Now the Massacre of Glencoe, early in the morning of February 12th, 1692. So February 12th, I don't know if you have to remember it like that, but 1692. In the aftermath of the Glorious Revolution and the Jacobite uprising of 1689, led by John Graham of Claverhouse, a massacre took place in Glencoe in the Highlands of Scotland. The Highlands, okay, so that's where Glencoe is. It's in the Highlands. This incident is referred to as the Massacre of Glencoe, or in Scottish Gaelic, Mort Glen Comhan. The massacre began simultaneously in 3 settlements along the Glen: Invercoe, Invergan, and Auchnancon. Although the killing took place all over the Glen, as fleeing MacDonalds were pursued. The MacDonalds were the family that was getting murdered all over the place. 38 MacDonalds from the clan MacDonald of Glencoe were killed by the guests who had accepted their hospitality on the grounds that the MacDonalds had not been prompt in pledging allegiance to the new monarch, William and Mary. Another 40 women and children died of exposure after their homes were burnt. So 38, I guess, of the men or whatever, they're getting shot and murdered, and then after that, their homes were burnt, and then the women and children had died. So overall, 78 people died in the Massacre of Glencoe, which is in the Highlands of Scotland. So Glencoe, we got Scottish influence with the name of Glencoe. We have Greek influence with Sparta. Napoleon, that's French influence, right? And Gent is it's the Treaty of Gent. It's Belgium, so Netherlands. Dutch, I guess I'll just put Dutch influence, and then Warsaw's Polish influence. So Polish influence, you're like, Warsaw, you know, there is Warsaw, Poland, but there's actually the revolution had happened. The Polish Revolution happened in 1831, and then Warsaw was named in the revolution happened in 1830, and Warsaw was named in 1831. So it was named the year after the Polish revolutions. So it is directly, you know, comparable. It's directly, it makes sense, or directly has a direct correlation. So that's the most. I think Carl Bogardus is, I don't know. I mean, you never know, right? History is kind of I don't want to say it's a guessing game, but you sort of look through it all and then sort of make sense of all the conflicting accounts. Because according to Bogardus, he had said that it was named after the Thaddeus of Warsaw, some book. They named it after a book, but I don't believe that. It doesn't make sense. It was named in 1831. 1830 is when the Polish revolutionaries overthrew everybody. So I think there would have been a lot. That would have been the story of the day that was going on in Europe. And people used to read. You know, Kentuckians used to read back then. In fact, in one year, like 1900s, the top 6. 6 of the top 10 of the best authors or the best novels were Kentuckians, written by Kentuckians. So Kentucky used to have, I mean, I don't know, there's countercurrents all over the place, but there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad when it comes out of Kentucky. Yeah, so Glencoe's named after the Highlands of Scotland. The Massacre of Glencoe, finally incorporated in 1960, and we're going to talk about Warsaw coming up.